Hi, I'm Bree LaPlante. I am a sophomore in the Carlson School of Management studying marketing, and I TA for BA 1910W, which is a freshman seminar specializing in crisis communications for corporations. First thing I think is just proofreading. If you turn something into me and it's not proofread, that just says a lot about how much time you put into it, how much effort you put into it. With proofreading comes just like word choice. Diction's a big one. I really hate the word interesting or words like great or things that aren't great descriptors or just like words that don't carry a lot of meaning. With that too, I think I look for a lot of passive voice. Business writing in particular should not have any passive voice in it because it's really who's doing the action, why are they doing it, because that kind of implicates who's in charge, and that's a big part of business. One I see a lot is like, because we do crisis communications, so it was reported that this crisis took place, or it has been said that this is a trend in this industry, whatever. Really, just the alternative is, I think, just finding more information, just who is saying this, or even just on your own understanding is who is saying these things, who are doing these things, and it usually is getting away from generalities and trying to be more specific, which I think is also a key part of writing, is being as specific as possible, avoiding generalities, avoiding blaming general people or society, or really pinpointing who is doing what. It's because usually if you're being specific, you don't even use passive voice, because you can have a clear action, a clear subject, clear what the subject is acting on. Subject lines are hard. Usually, if it's a memo, especially where you're giving a recommendation, the best thing is to identify who the party in question is and like what they should do. Delta Airlines must give refunds after terrible flights, or because really your analysis, your summary of whatever's happening will be summed up in your recommendation, because your recommendation is based on it. So some of the worst subject lines I see are the ones that are just like, this thing happened. It's kind of more of a summary, or like, this thing was bad. So it's kind of starting on the analysis. But really, since the recommendation is the summation of all of that, just going with subject should do, or even better is if you have a subject, an action, and an implication. Delta Airlines should give refunds to maintain customer support are some of the strongest subject lines I see.
So it has specific
extremely
why.
Specific, as brief as possible, very carefully chosen words that convey very specific meaning. I think good subject lines take a while. Usually one of the last things you write your entire memo first, really understand what happened, why it happened, and what you want someone to do about it. That and like executive summaries should be written last. I would definitely write the headings last. We structure our memos like summary, analysis, recommendations, and you can have multiple sections within those. But I think you can't aptly summarize something in one line if you haven't written it yet. Generally, I think content should come first when you write, and then headings or subject lines or summaries should come last, because those are the things that are tools to your reader. They don't necessarily help you write the paper. I personally am a perfectionist, so I used to write, or had to be perfect the first time. I'd spend an hour writing one sentence, and frankly, it's been kind of liberating I call it word vomiting, where you just write down at the extreme of consciousness everything you're thinking. Maybe some trial headings, like maybe this will be the heading that summarizes my section, but understand that it's a working draft. You will go back and revise and edit everything. Nothing is going to stay the same, but just to get that first attempt on the page will be miles more helpful than trying to get it right the first time. I think headings should still be lower priority, because content really drives the memo. If the content's not there, no heading, no matter how good it is going to save it. But yeah, I think the more revision and the more eyes that see the paper, the more times you delete things and change them, the more times you print it out and physically edit it with a pencil and a highlighter, the better. The best memos I see are students who've met with me, who have gotten roommates and friends to peer edit for them, who they themselves have printed off, read it aloud. Honestly, just the more time you spend with the paper, the better quality it's going to be, especially for things like headings. The more people who read them, the more times you read them, the better they're going to be. I think just simply printing it off and not seeing it on a computer screen would have brought a lot of errors to light, especially because for the class that I TA for, we just digitally submit papers. So if you only ever see it on a computer, I think it's easy for your eyes to just gloss over some things because you know your own writing style, and you definitely don't read every word every time you do an edit, but printing it out and taking like a pen and just following along every word and reading it aloud brings out grammatical errors or just awkward phrasing, poor word choice, or frankly just after a whole sentence or a whole section, like, what was I thinking? I need to rework this entire thing. I just think the more time you spend with a paper, the better it's going to be. My experience with group projects, and especially group essays, is it's better to divvy up roles rather than sections. So if a professor allows it, having researchers, outliners, writers, and editors, rather than you take section 1, you take section 2, and section 3. Because then at just each step of the process, I think each student feels like they contribute more, and eventually the whole final paper will be much more cohesive than, each section has a different tone, has a different objective, might be using the wrong pronouns or other just like stylistic things that differ by writer. If that's not allowed, or if every person really does need to write what's on the page, I think really trying to work together, maybe each person writes a section, but as a group edit. The more people in the group who read over it, who make suggestions, who ask like, oh, is this really the way we want to say it? And like obviously in a very polite and constructive way, give feedback and criticism to each other. I think the worst group project you could turn in is one where each person truly just wrote their own section, no one looked at each other's sections, you just handed it in and hoped that it sounded like one cohesive paper. I think the first thing was just honestly, if I'm peer editing for someone, just reading the whole thing first before I make any criticisms or feedback. Just read the whole thing, get a view from the whole. Because usually student writing, especially for undergraduates, like underclassmen undergraduates, it's pretty rough, like sentence by sentence. But as a whole, there's great ideas. They definitely can do research. It's all there. It's just kind of polishing it, and especially for business writing. The freshman, sophomore years of college is the first time that all these students are going to be doing business writing. So reading the whole thing to really get the general idea of what they're trying to say, and then leave feedback of, here's how you can say this better. So not just pointing out what's wrong, but really offering a solution or an alternative, or just some like general comments to guide their editing and revision efforts. Because I think there's nothing more disheartening than someone saying this is bad, but not saying why it's bad or how it could be better. Really that constructive feedback piece is, even if you know nothing about writing, you can just say, hey, this sentence sounds kind of awkward to me. Could you try this? Or would you read it aloud and tell me what you think? And kind of having those dialogues too will really help. I think more mechanics and other things, either a TA can help. Honestly, the newest updated version of Word is a harsher critic than any student edit I've ever gotten. It actually asks me what phrasing I'm thinking about and tells me to make changes. But I think meeting with a TA is honestly, every writing intensive course will have a TA who wants to help students edit their writing. I think for students who feel they don't have the expertise to give very specific feedback to their peers, should really focus on big ideas, or just like how things are said. Maybe if the content is fine, just like, hey, can you say this better? This isn't clear to me. Like kind of speak on a peer level. Like if you were trying to explain this to me, I'm not quite getting what you're saying. And definitely to just be as polite as possible, because I think the other tendency is to get kind of harsh with your peers, and I'm definitely guilty of that. But I think being a TA has humbled me a lot in terms of giving feedback, because everyone is putting their best foot forward and wants to do well.